Okay, so now let's import this mesh into Solaris and let's render this. So after the particle fluid surface, let's add a null, and in here let's connect this and let's call this one out mesh. Okay, and up here we have the shader ball, so let's add a null here as well, and let's connect this and let's call this one out ball. Okay, and now let's go into the stage context, and in here let's add a sub import node, and from here let's select our mesh null. So here we have the out mesh, so let's select that and let's call this one mesh, and let's duplicate this sub import node, and in here let's select our out ball to import our shader ball, and let's add an merge in here. Let's merge this, and also let's rename this to ball, and after that let's add a material library. So let's connect that and let's dive inside, and in here let's create a material X standard surface material. So let's call this one mesh, and let's duplicate this material and let's call this one ball. Okay, so let's go back here onto the material library. Let's click autofill material and let's check assign to geometry, and let's drag our mesh into the slot, and let's add the ball into the ball shader slot, and let's remove this stage and from here. Okay, and after that let's add a Karma render node. Let's connect this, set the display flag to the Karma, and let's add a dome light in here, and let's add this into the merge, and onto the dome light let's select our HDRI Heaven Skylight Garage HDRI. Okay, so in here let's change the render engine to Karma and let's see the result. Okay, so let's dive inside the material library, and here we have the shader for the mesh. So in here let's adjust the base color. Okay, so let's create a brown, and let's create a more darkish brown to create a chocolate like color. Okay, and let's go back, and here onto the dome light let's add the exposure. Okay, so let's increase the exposure a bit, and now let's dive inside the material library and let's keep adjusting its color value. Okay, so let's create this darkish brown. Okay, and let's go into the specular, and here we can adjust the specular. Okay, so let's increase this to 1, and here we have the roughness for the specular. So right now we have a perfect shiny chocolate, so let's add a 0.1 of the specular roughness, or maybe 0.2 is good. Okay, so 0.2 is looking good, or let's increase this more. Okay, so here we can adjust the index of refraction. Okay, so let's lower the index of refraction, let's keep it default. So right click, let's change this revert to default. Okay, and now let's go back and create a ground plane. Okay, so let's change this back to Houdini GL, and let's go into the object level, and in here let's add a grid, and let's dive inside, and onto the grid let's increase the size. Let's change this to 100 by 100 to fill the entire camera region. So now let's go into the stage context, and in here let's add another SAP import node, and let's merge this, and from here let's select our grid. So up here we have the grid, let's select the grid. Okay, and now let's create a material for the grid. So let's dive inside the material library, and in here let's duplicate this shader, and let's call this one ground, and for this one let's change the base color to a darkish black, and let's go into the specular and let's increase the specular roughness. Okay, and now let's go back, and here onto the material library let's click on the autofill material to import our ground material. So in here let's rename this ground, and let's drag this null into the ground, and let's remove the stage from the path, and now let's change the render engine to Karma. Okay, and maybe let's click on this eye icon and change the color scheme to dark. Okay, or maybe let's change this to gray. So let's create a viewing camera. Okay, let's go inside the material library, and let's adjust the ground color. Let's create an even more darker ground. Okay, something like this maybe. So let's disable the light. Okay, so that's the light guide. Okay, so we actually disable the light guide, not the light. So let's go back and let's choose the different frame for rendering. Okay, and we are not using the Karma XPU, so currently we are using the Karma CPU. So let's change this to Houdini GL, and let's go into the Karma and let's change the render engine to XPU, and let's render again. Okay, so Houdini have this viewport update problem. Okay, so now we are using the Karma XPU and the rendering is fast. So let's change this to Houdini GL again, and maybe let's go into the animation editor and let's go into the scene view again. Okay, so now we don't have the fluid, but that's a refreshing bug of the viewport. Okay, so let's select another frame, maybe let's go into the animation editor and let's go to the scene view, or let's change this to Karma. Here as you can see we have in the rendering. So let's change this back to Houdini GL, so it's not showing up. So something is wrong with the Houdini viewport. Okay, so let's change this to Karma again, and in here you can increase the sample for create a less noisy render. Okay, so here we have the render of our chocolate. Okay, so maybe let's go into the material library and let's adjust the chocolate color, and let's create a more darkish color. Okay, so let's bring the value down, and also let's decrease the saturation down. Okay, so that's looks like a chocolate. Okay, so now let's go into the Karma render setting and onto the output picture. select the location where you want to render. Okay, and after that change the frame range to a frame range that you have written out the caches. Okay, and render to disk option to render your scene. Okay, and before that we need to create a camera. Okay, so right now we don't have any camera in the scene. Okay, so that's basically how you can render your particles fluid mesh, okay, inside of Solaris using Karma.